Well, staying on the local front, the bail reform hearing by the New York City Council this past weekend revealed that the correctional department was not following the law and that its systems are antiquated. We're going to discuss this and more with Michael Benjamin, who's the Associate Editorial Page Editor of the NYpost. And as always, Mike, good to have you.
I'm well. Good morning.
Good morning. Before we get to talking about the bail reform, I do want to get your comments. President George H.W. Bush dying at the age of 94. Talk to us about President Bush's legacy and the legacy that he leaves behind.
Oh no, Daren, your call, I couldn't hear it at all, what you said.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me try again. I said that we're talking about the death of President Bush and the legacy that he leaves behind at the age of 94.
I think George H.W. Bush leaves a great legacy for America. I mean, I have always believed he's one of the most qualified men to serve as President of the United States. You know, having been, a combat veteran, Texas oil man, a member of Congress, a UN ambassador, an envoy to China, CIA director, vice president of the United States, and then president. I mean, what more could you want from a man giving service to his country and having, despite what we may have with him and the Republic, recognizing his family or the need to serve the nation politically. And I think he did that greatly. And I think many Americans can learn from that, especially his character. And that's something that throughout the memorials regarding George W. Bush, everyone talks about his and more than his politics.
I think one of the more gripping images was that video of watching former U.S. Senator Bob Dole actually stand up and salute the casket of President Bush. What does that say to you in terms of course, his long-standing character that many people have never questioned, but you may disagree with his political policies, but overall, as a man, I think it was somebody that we all look back. This is the guy who was, skydiving as a senior citizen.
Yes. Again, it's all about his character and love of country, and others, such as former Senator Bob Dole, saw in him a fellow combat veteran who, nearly gave his life and limb for his nation, then comes back to raise a family. Yes, he was a wealthy man, but he used his wealth to benefit Americans and to use his knowledge and his worldliness to be helpful. And everybody that's spoken about him has talked about what a wonderful man, warm man that he was. And, we forget he was president during the fall of the Soviet Union. He was president in helping to guide the unification of the two Germanys. I mean, many young people had no idea that at one time you had an East and a West Germany, which were at odds with each other. And now they're one country that's an economic giant in Europe, and it's remaining a valuable American ally.
Yeah. Let me go a little bit closer to home, and let's bring things closer to home as I start off talking about the bail reform hearing held by the City Council, deeming that the New York Corrections Department not following the laws. Let's break this down. What exactly does this mean, and where are we right now?
Years ago, the City Council passed legislation to make bail easier for New Yorkers to achieve and requiring the Department of Corrections to help facilitate that. And in the years since legislation was passed, the City Department of Corrections has been dragging its feet in making it easier for New Yorkers to be bailed out. There's supposed to be ATM terminals in courthouses. Persons were given no more than 3 hours after bail is posted for them to be released. And the Bronx Bail Freedom Fund, a bail fund set up by the Bronx defenders to help low-level offenders, make their bail and get out of jail so they can be with their lawyers and their families to mount a good defense. And the Corrections Department has put up a number of roadblocks. Some of them are institutional, including the fact their technology is outdated. I mean, the Department of Corrections still uses fax machines to send documents to and from various locations, courthouses and the city jails. And they also have these high fees for posting bail with the companies that they've been using. And so the council hearing was able to detail all of that and to get a commitment from the city and Department of Corrections to move towards finally implementing every aspect of a law that the city council passed.
And so where do we see this going from here?
Well, what we need to see, and I think what we're going to see next year, is in Albany. You need the state legislature and the governor to enact legislation which would end cash bail and make the bailing procedures much easier, and even look at maybe expanding the ability for charity bail organizations to be able to be set up to help many more offenders to make their bail and to be able to, have counsel with their attorneys and be able to return to court for the court dates and to mount a proper defense. One of the things that we don't talk about here in New York, particularly in the Bronx, is how long it takes for individuals who've been incarcerated, who've been jailed, to go to trial. And if you can't make bail and you're stuck on Rikers, your attorney can't see you as often as he or she would like. And I think that affects one's ability to defend oneself in court.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some other things. What do you have on your lens and coming up on the horizon that you're paying particular attention to around here?
Well, one of the things that struck me last week was a recent New York State Court of Appeals ruling which said that non-citizen New Yorkers were entitled to jury trials for all potentially deportable offenses. In the particular case, there was one undocumented immigrant who had assaulted his wife, his common law wife, and their children, and he was being held on misdemeanor charges, and he was charged with misdemeanors, and he was going to trial. He went to trial. And usually in New York State, when you are a misdemeanor offenses, you don't get a jury trial. Usually it's a bench trial by a judge, and that's been upheld by the Supreme Court for decades now. In this case, because this man was an undocumented immigrant, he had a visa violation. Upon conviction for a misdemeanor, he was risking deportation, and so his lawyer petitioned the court for a trial by jury. The judge denied it. The man was later convicted, and his lawyers then appealed to the appellate court. The appellate court upheld his conviction, and saying he did not qualify for a jury trial. It went all the way to the State Court of Appeals, which found on a 5-2 decision that because of the potential threat of a federal deportation, which is a much larger penalty than 90 days in jail for a misdemeanor, the judges ruled that the defendant and other non-citizens are deserving of a jury trial because the outcome could be a much greater penalty. And in essence, the New York Post we had an editorial saying that the Court of Appeals was extending Sixth Amendment rights to non-citizens that normal, regular citizens in New York State don't have, which is a right to a jury trial when you are charged with misdemeanor offenses. Bronx DA Clark said she was looking at the possibility of appealing the Court of Appeals decision to the U.S. Supreme Court. And in our editorial, we encouraged her to do so.
Yeah, I was going to ask the question about how realistic is that? I mean, given the facts of the case, it certainly is worth possibly the appeals process. It's
an important case for the case law to finally be settled because there appear to be conflicting precedents. One precedent, Supreme Court has ruled for states that states can limit the right to jury trial to just felony trials, where you can have a severe penalty. Other cases, there have been, the states recently, in the D.C. Circuit Court said that non-citizens had Sixth Amendment rights to jury trial, even for misdemeanor offenses. And I think the U.S. Supreme Court, is a proper referee to determine the facts of the cases and what ought to be the law when it comes to non-citizens who commit state offenses that are misdemeanors, but it's because of the way federal laws are written. If you're a non-citizen and you're convicted of a misdemeanor offense, you may be subject to deportation. In our view, the Court of Appeals made up law, was activist, and extended rights to non-citizens that the court had no business doing.
All right, Mike. Well, we'll continue to follow that and then some, but we thank you for joining us here. Mike Benjamin, our guest here on Open. Thanks for joining us, Mike. All right. Same. Happy holidays to you, too, if we don't talk. All right, listen, taking a quick break. We will be back with more Open. Stay with us. We're coming back in a few.